Okay, so this one is where it starts to get a little bit tricky. um, so this one wants us to write a triangle, a function triangle n, with n being the parameter, that returns an upright triangle of height n. So for example, triangle 5 should return this picture right here. So it may not be immediately obvious what's going on here, and they don't tell us this, but you're going to need to make use of your spaceline function in order to make this actually happen here. So go ahead, give it a shot using your spaceline function that you've written previously, and see if you can get it to see if you can get your new function, your triangle n function, to do what this asks us to do right here using spaceline. So if you weren't able to do that, first I'm going to always start with my docstring. So returns a multi-line string of hash characters in the shape of an upright triangle of height n. Alright, so in this case, what we're going to want to do, and I'll walk through it step by step here, is think about what we would need to do to draw this first line. So again, we're starting with an example point. We're starting with triangle 5. Even though we'll take that and make it more general, we're starting with a specific example. So triangle 5. And let's break it down even smaller. Okay, how would I do the first line of triangle 5? Well, I can look at it and know that I'm going to need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 characters. 4 of them are going to be spaces, and 1 of them is going to be a hashtag, which means that for that first line, I'm going to want to run spaceline. Essentially, I'm going to want to run spaceline for 1. Now, I can't, write out then run spaceline for the next line. It would be spaceline, what is that? 3, 3. Yeah, 3, 3. So I can't just write all this out, but if I wanted to build something that looked exactly like this, what would I need to keep doing? I would need to then go 2, 5. And then the next line would be spaceline 1 and 7. And then the last one would be spaceline 0, 9. So look at this here. Look at our pattern that we're building. We want 4 spaces and then 1 hashtag. And then for the next line, we want 3 spaces and 3 hashtags, and then 2 spaces and 5 hashtags. So you should see a pattern here. For each subsequent line of the triangle, for each time you increase n by 1, the number of spaces you have should decrease by 1, and the number of hashes you have should increase by 2. So every time we iterate through, we want to make sure that we're ending up with 1 less space and 2 more hashes. So we can't just do it like this, unfortunately. So we know that we want spaces to decrease by 1 and hashes to increase by 2 every time through. So let's first get our triangle string, because again we're going to be iterating through and adding onto an empty string, and then for I in range n. So 5 times we're going to run spaceline and add it to our triangle string. This works exactly the same as before, right? Triangle string is going to be increased. It's going to be increased by itself. It's going to be equal to itself plus spaceline for some number of spaces and hashes plus an empty a new line character. So right now this is basically the same line of code that we would use to get a square, right? If I instead did 0 and 4, this is going to make me a square of 4. So let me just go ahead and first I'll set up my return, and then go ahead and call triangle 5. So actually this will give me a rectangle that is 5 high and 4 long. And so if I increase the spaces, what it's going to do is get me a rectangle that is 5 high and 4 long and slightly over to the right. So all I'm showing you is that this works essentially the same as all the other functions that we've been writing so far. So set it up exactly the same for your for loop here that we've been doing in all the other exercises up to this. The for loop looks pretty much exactly the same. The only thing different is us having to figure out what to do with this function. How are we going to make it so where the space line function gets the proper number here? So let's generalize, right? Look at this first line. This is, how long is this line? This line is 5 long, right? So if I have it so where every time to get to the middle of this triangle, so to get to this middle line, it's always going to be 5 characters, right? So let me start by seeing if I can draw that, because that's easy. I can get to 5 characters each time. All I have to do is make sure that these two numbers add up to 5. And I can do that by making the number of spaces equal to n minus I. So that'll return n spaces minus I. So the first time through it will return 5 spaces minus I, which is 0. Actually, that's wrong. Okay, so that's not right. It should instead be n minus I minus 1. So it's going to return it's going to return 5 spaces, because that's n, 5 spaces minus I spaces, which in this case is 0, so still 5, minus 1, which is 4. And then the next time through, it'll do n, which is 5, minus I, which is 1, so we're down to 4, minus 1, which is 3, which is going to get us our 3 spaces here. The same thing for this next one. N is still 5, so 5 minus I, which is 2, equals 3, minus 1 equals 2, so that gets us our 2 spaces here. So this should draw a rectangle up to the, or sorry, a triangle, a right angle triangle up to the middle of this. So let's go ahead and give that a shot. Oh, nope, because I did not set this up right. I'm going to go ahead and just set this to 1 for now. So this should draw. Okay, so that gets me part of the way there. I forgot to set up my hashes. So each time we want the hashes, if we're only drawing the left side of this triangle, to go up by, let's see, 1, 2, so it should go up by 1 every time. So our number of hashes is going to be equal to I plus 1, right? So the first time through, it's going to build I. The second time through, it's going to build, the first time through, it'll build I plus 1, which is 1. The second time through, it'll build I plus 1, which is 2. The third time through, it'll build I plus 1, which will be 3, because I is increasing every time by 1. So this should get me a right-align triangle. So it's the opposite of, if you remember, our stairs up here, where we did I plus 1 for each line. This time down here, we're doing the same thing where it's I plus 1 for each line, but we're also moving it over by this many spaces. So again, it's just kind of working it out step by step to try to get this to build something that looks right. So, we started with n spaces, which didn't work. We started with n minus I spaces, which didn't work. And we realized that if we do n minus I minus 1, we get the right number of spaces. So now we just need to figure out what's going on with the other side of this rectangle. So, this triangle. So we've gotten to here. We've gotten to this point. So compare these two triangles. Let me get them both on screen here if I can. Compare these two triangles, ours down here that we have and what they have up here. So all we're missing on this next line is 1 character. And then on the line after that, we need 2 characters. And the line after that, we need 3 characters. And the line after that, we need 4 characters. So what is the pattern we see here? Well, it's increasing by 1 each time, right? What else is increasing by 1 each time? The answer is I. Our iterator is increasing by 1 each time. So if we add another I onto the end, so either I plus 1 plus I, or if you prefer 2 times I plus 1, so 2I plus 1, or like I said before, I, if that's like a little scary for you, you can just think of it as I plus 1. It's going to go through each time and get us our right number of spaces, which is n minus I minus 1, because we want it to give us n total characters minus I for the current level we're on, minus 1 to get rid of our initial hashtag. And then we want it to give us one hashtag for the middle hashtag that we want it to build, plus I for the hashtag onto the side, which the first time through will be 0, and then I for the other hashtag on the other side. So, for example, line 2 here, we want it to give us the right number of spaces, and then we want it to give us 1 hashtag plus I, which is 1, plus I, which is 1. So that's how we're going to do it. So if I run this, it gives me that appropriate triangle. So let's see how they did it. Save my code. See how they did it. So again, they have spaceline up here. For their spaceline, they used this kind of thing that we did way back in the beginning when I showed you how to do the first line, where you use multiplication symbols to do repeated concatenation, which is fine. And then if you look down here, it looks like their for loop is basically the same as ours, where they did n minus I minus 1 for their spaces. And they did, instead of I plus 1, they did 2 times I plus 1, which gives us the same thing. So this should give us the same triangle. So there we go. Either of those ways is fine. Just make sure that you use your spaceline function and then walk through to get this. I know it's complicated to try to figure out what the actual algebraic equation, the algebraic sentence that you need to use to get the right number of spaces and the right number of hashes, but really, if you watched what I did here, all you need to do is really just sit down with an example and just kind of run through and ask yourself, what are the patterns that I'm seeing? How many spaces did each line need? How many hashes did each line need? How can I make that into a mathematical equation, a mathematical expression? So it's not easy, right? But I believe in you guys and I believe you can do it. So give it a shot.